All right, recording in progress. Don't say anything silly.
That's right. We're going to let folks come on in and get their audio set up, their video set up. And no promises. I will absolutely say something silly. That's just going to happen, guys. Don't worry about it. It's part of the package at this point.
Keep it low key.
Come on in, gang. I'll tell you what, while everybody is getting their audio set up, how about we exercise our typing fingers a little bit? Let's head over to, you can find your chat button. Here is a pre-discussion chat for you to answer. How about this one? What is one of the biggest concerns you have when it comes to giving AI more involvement within your product or your features? So concerns with giving AI more involvement in your product or features. Stick your answer over in the chat and we'll have some nice little info to bounce off of over here. The cleanliness of the data, says Matt. Or maybe he said data. I'm not sure. Cleanliness. Yeah, absolutely. I can see how that would be a concern. Concerns that it will take away from the user experience rather than add to it. Good one, Michael. Yeah. Trustworthiness. Yeah, I'm sensing a theme here. Can we trust it? Can we trust it? Accuracy of the information. Yeah. Governance. Who's providing governance? Thanks, Glenn. Yeah. Good ones. All righty. More accuracy. Look at all this accuracy, trustworthiness. Rachel and Chip, you guys getting the theme here?
I'm hearing that GPT gets it wrong sometimes.
Yeah. Customer or client acceptance. Now, there's an interesting one from Robert there. You know, if you implement it in your product, is the customer going to accept that? Do they want it? Good one. All right, good stuff. Hey, Rachel and Chip, I think our crowd is primed, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off officially here, gang. I am Eddie Gordon, courseware designer at Pragmatic Institute, and my goodness, do we have a good show for you today. We've got with us Chip Boyd and Rachel Hsiung. They will both be giving us a talk today that is perfectly relevant to the discussion we were just having in the chat. A few housekeeping items before I fully introduce them. You will notice, and you've all been such good doobies to try it out so far, that there is a chat button down the bottom of Zoom. You used it correctly. That is for chatting. You will also notice that in this webinar format of Zoom, there is not only chat, but there is a Q&A button. The Q&A button is what you're going to use if you would like to ask a question specifically of our presenters today. We will probably save the majority of those towards the end, but if you stick your Q&A towards the topic at hand in the Q&A button, then that will help me keep track of it so I can send it over to them. If you would just like to compliment each other or our guests, or you just want to talk about your dogs, do that in the chat. We love that. I promise I read all those as well. So you can do that over there in the chat. That is awesome. We welcome it as well. And with that, let's see. If you have been to one of the Pragmatic Institute presentations before, you are no doubt familiar with the Pragmatic Institute alumni community. Rachel, do we have a slide for the alumni community? I think I saw it a second ago. There it is. The Pragmatic alumni community is all about exchanging real-life experiences and conversations with other product folks and connecting you to the resources and offerings and sessions like this one is what we like to do there. If you are not an alumni yet, I hope you can become one by taking your first course and join us, because if you didn't know, you just got to take a Pragmatic Institute course and you have access to the Pragmatic alumni community, which is invaluable. So do that. All righty. Next slide. Let's get down to business. It was probably a matter of months ago for most of you when you woke up and suddenly all of your news feed headlines contained a 2-letter acronym, and you were told that the world was now different. And you were like, what's going on? As it turns out, it was not much of an exaggeration. And our job is to figure out how in the world we are now going to live with this new advancement in technology. I am so grateful that we have the experts with us today to get a long ways along that discussion about our place in the world with this new technology. We have with us Chip Boyd, who is the Senior Director of Product for Etsy, leading teams focused on ML, data, and personalization. Working in the product space for 10 plus years, Chip has done everything from building fraud defenses and personalization capabilities at Capital One to enhancing marketing segmentation capabilities for AOL and Verizon. Today, he is most passionate about helping Etsy teams utilize and effectively leverage AI to ensure amazing experiences for Etsy buyers and sellers. Chip is not alone. We also welcome Rachel Hsiung, who is product designer at Etsy, specializing in information science and product strategy in technical spaces, namely data engineering and machine learning. Rachel's most passionate about improving AI or ML. I'll let her distinguish what those two acronyms stand for in a minute. It's interesting, trust me. AI and ML processes to be more human-centered, as well as the intersection between design and data. My goodness, you guys got the bona fides. I'm so glad you're here to join us on the conversation. Chip and Rachel, would you mind if I sent you a link to click to confirm that you are in fact human before we start the conversation? Are you good with that? You're good with it? Okay, that was the test. You just had to smile and recognize it was a joke, and then I forgive, and we can go on. Chip,
I was like, do you really have a link for that?
Yeah. Step number 1: don't take Eddie seriously. He asks good questions, but he goofs around too much as well. Chip and Rachel, so glad to have you with us. Will you please teach us how in the world we can find our place alongside this new technology, and why staying human focused is really going to be the key to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was like an amazing intro. I've never been introed in that way before. So thank you, Eddie. I am indeed human. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and start my slides. So FYI for all the folks who are in the audience, I believe the pragmatic folks are going to send you a PDF with all of the information. There's actually also a bunch of skip slides in the PDF that I'm not going to go over live in our presentation today, but they are there as additional context for you guys if you want to take a look. All right, so let's get started. So we've identified 4 principles for human-centered AI/ML. There are way more than 4 principles. I just want to start with that disclaimer. These 4 were the 4 that we wanted to focus on. This was a presentation that we actually initially gave internally to all of our Etsy ML product teams, because they had a lot of the same questions that you guys have. We had a lot of the same concerns about the risks of AI. So we also had this conversation internally. So we picked the 4 that we felt like were the most timely and relevant to focus on, not just for the broader industry, but also for Etsy. And we drew from conversations that we had been observing in the wider AI/ML industry, as well as from our own experiences trying to build human-centered products at Etsy. There's a bunch of resources in the appendix as well, which I'll briefly cover if you want to read about a lot more than just 4 principles, because there's an infinite number, but we'll start with these 4. So Eddie already gave us an intro, so we don't have to intro ourselves. This is me, this is Chip. And some of the context, both for our internal audience as well as for y'all. And again, Eddie already covered a lot of this, which is great, which is just that, ChatGPT was one of the fastest growing consumer software applications in history. Although at this point, if you look at the numbers, it looks like their active users are declining. So that's interesting. But because of just like a wider ability to access generative AI, I think that has triggered an industry-wide and also like within Etsy, like a company-wide conversation about how do we use AI in a way that actually improves our customer experience rather than getting distracted by sexy technology. So that was why we created this presentation. We really wanted to encourage investments at Etsy and outside of the industry, and outside in the industry, to be user-centered, and also to gauge like where you're going to have enough impact that it outweighs the cost, since AI ML is not always cheap. Okay, so here's a table of contents. We basically have 4 big principles. We're going to talk about explanations and using explanations to help end users. We're going to talk about maybe when it's not appropriate to use AI ML, and actually you should start with a heuristic. We're then going to talk about designing effective human-in-the-loop systems. And then the last piece we'll talk about is how you evaluate predicted outputs from AI ML systems. Then we have a couple bonuses, and then we'll quickly review some of the additional resources. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about explanations before I pass it off to Chip to talk about the next one, which is heuristics. So provide explanations to end users to increase usability and effectiveness. So we did some research and we looked at a lot of the existing Gen AI products on the market. And actually, they've been around for a long time. So like Amazon Alexa has been around for a while. It's not new, as well as, the Google like Siri and like all these other voice assistants. And what we've seen is not just our own observation, but folks in the industry also have identified how some of these assistants on the market don't offer any affordances or hints or guidance to users on how to use them. And this lack of affordance means that it can be really difficult for the average user to figure out how to use this product effectively. And so that's sort of a case for like, make sure you think through like, what are the affordances? How do you explain to your user how to use something effectively that's AI powered? I really liked this article from, I don't remember where, from The Verge, where they gave some stats about how 15 to 25% of new Alexa devices were no longer active by just the second week of use. And Alexa devices with screens are 74% are used more. 74% of users who have an Alexa device with a screen use it weekly, compared to only 66% of Echo users and 56% of Echo Dot users. So that suggests a problem with discoverability and usability for voice interfaces that don't have those additional affordances, for example, via a screen. And I think the most interesting part to me is like, a voice assistant can do so much. It's essentially an LLM that can, come up with anything that you ask it. And yet, just again, because of the lack of affordances, it's really difficult to discover how to use it effectively. And so some analysis has showed that like within Alexa users will discover half of all the features that they'll ever use within 3 hours of activating the device, which is just playing music, setting timers, and controlling lights. Seems kind of like a very small amount of things that you can do with something that is powered by an entire LLM. So let's dive a little bit deeper into how you make affordances good. So the point is that you want to make sure that the usage is really clear to users. So it's not just voice-based assistants that struggle with this explainability problem to their users. It's also text-based conversational experience like chatbots. So I really like this quote from Amelia Wattenberger, who's a principal research engineer in the space of ML. Good tools should make it clear how they should be used. And of course, users can learn over time what prompts work well and which don't, but the burden to learn what works still lies with every single user, at least currently, as you see with ChatGPT. So an example of this is if you go on Reddit and you just look at what people are saying about ChatGPT, one of the most popular pieces of content is users teaching each other how to use ChatGPT by creating these cheat sheets and guides for how to write prompts. So that is already like a huge signal that like ChatGPT on its own doesn't provide enough guidance for users on how to use it effectively. And sort of the last point that I'll end with here in this section is we are not our users. Jacob Nielsen, who probably a lot of you folks know as a usability pioneer, he has an article that's linked here where he sort of like analyzes AI products and some of their risks with user experience. And one thing that I really love that he points out is that like something like ChatGPT, for example, implies or takes as an assumption that users are very articulate and articulate enough to write the kind of prose that you need to create a prompt. And so I think, his point is really just like, you aren't your user, and we have to keep that in mind when building AI products. We are not our users. Like, what is the level of average literacy for our average user for a given product? And thinking about stuff like that and not taking for granted that, oh, we all work in tech, so of course we know how to use an AI product, but like our users are not us, and how do we put ourselves in their shoes? This is just a fun SNL skit from honestly years ago where they roast Amazon Echo's usability and how maybe some folks who are a little older or who aren't familiar with this complete lack of an interface, a screen-based interface, just have no idea how to use this device at all. Examples from Google I also find that the Google People Plus AI Research Guidebook, probably a bunch of folks in this room are aware of it. They provide really good specific examples. So here's an example of how you can write an explanation for a user. So this is an app that helps you track, design your running routes. And so on the left, the good example is, this app is suggesting a different route that has minimal elevation and even surface and a slower pace because it has some indication that you're on a recovery day, versus on the right, it just says, oh, we've adjusted your normal route to aid in your recovery. In the example on the right, you haven't really explained to the user why or how the AI product has altered the end user experience. And this example that I actually pulled from the Nielsen Norman group. Folks are probably familiar with them as a usability, a source of lots of usability research. Spotify, not every explanation has to be in prose form. Like, the reason we are making this change is because we recognize XYZ. Spotify's playlists are a good example of this, where really what they're doing with their daily mixes is giving you an affordance of what is going to be in this daily mix. So you can tell the mix on the right is Massive Attack, Underworld, John Hopkins stuff, etc. And a quote from one of the users they interviewed was that they found these daily mix playlists more helpful than Discover Weekly because it's broken down in a way where they can already understand what's going to be in that mix, versus Discover Weekly, where they felt like they never knew what they were going to get in that. So they didn't know if that was going to be the right playlist for them to play in a given moment. Bunch of resources here. I won't read everything out, but I do want to point out the Montreal Declaration for Responsible Development of Artificial Intelligence. Principle 5.9 is any user of a service employing chatbots should be able to easily identify whether they are interacting with an AI system or a real person. I really sort of take this and I would apply it to almost any AI product, not necessarily as a rigid rule, but just as like a thought exercise. If you're building something that's AI powered, how important is it for your user to know that it is indeed AI? All right, passing it off to Chip.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I'm here to talk about maybe when not to use AI, and essentially when to think about heuristics. And so a heuristic, as we say on the slide, is going to be faster and more explainable. We already saw a lot of the value of explainability. And in the case where AI is the future, it'll provide a baseline for that AI and ML to beat. So let's start to unpack this a little bit. I just want to define heuristic really quickly. I think most of you as PMs probably know what a heuristic is, or are using heuristics as a technique for product development. But in this case, we're just going to say it's a simple and quickly implemented solution. It's a really vital step to any ML solution because the costs of ML are high. The hype is real. The pressure from your executive team is probably strong. But in many cases, we want to start simple. So let's start from there. The first thing we need to do, and this is product 101, so I know I'm explaining a lot of what you already know, is define the user need. As Simon Sinek says, start with why. It is really important to spend time unpacking the problem. And what a heuristic is going to offer you in these situations is it's going to prevent you from overbuilding. It's going to allow you to start simple, and it's going to enable you to learn. Are you actually building a solution that's aligned with a human need, or are you just listening to the VP of sales telling you that they need AI or they're not going to get any customers? And so using a heuristic allows you to power a customer experience, but in a way where you're learning quickly and you're validating that this is the right user need to spend time investing in. Next slide. So once you've identified that a problem is worth solving, it's really valuable to understand if AI is even the right path to go down. The heuristic ultimately could be the final state for what you're building, and it could provide value to your customers in ways where you don't need to go the subsequent step. There are, of course, cases where AI is going to be really powerful, things like recommendations, large data modeling and forecasting, natural language processing, of course, or even image recognition and creation. But a heuristic does on its own offer a ton of value. It is explainable. We already heard a lot about why explainability is so important. It is predictable. You kind of understand the logic flow in a heuristic. If it's just a decision tree, it's really easy to interpolate and understand. And it's transparent, both to the people working on it, as well as to the end user. And you can make it much more clear the kind of cause and effect that's happening when you're using a heuristic. over, something that's a little bit more black box, like a deep neural network, where, it's a little tougher to explain both to the people that built it and to the end users. Next slide. So one of the things to consider is there a pattern to the behavior? AI is really, really powerful when there's a pattern. And this use case in particular, it's a presentation from Google in 2019. They wanted to find the value between patterns and the solutions that they were able to offer. And in this case, they were looking at people who are looking to book travel. One of the things that they found was price was a really important criteria when you're booking travel. This probably comes as no surprise. But the way that manifested in the user behavior was people would just repeatedly check sites for the best flight options. And this creates a pattern where they found both an opportunity with the heuristic, but also where they started to see the opportunity with AI to unlock a more effective, deeper learning into what the best prices were going to be. And they could either offer an aggregation of what those best prices are, or they could offer alerts of those best prices. But ultimately, there was too much data for them to just use a simple heuristic. So that pattern was kind of a key telling point to consider heuristic or AI and what the trade-offs are. But even if you are going to go down the AI route, a heuristic is so critical for creating data to kind of jumpstart your process. I think a lot of people hear the term big data and they kind of underestimate how big it actually is. And when you're thinking about training models, particularly more advanced large language models and deep learning models, the amount of data you need is significant. It is a lot. And what a heuristic offers is it jumpstarts your collection process into getting that data. A heuristic is going to allow you to learn a lot about the behavioral signals that you're eventually turning into features. It's going to offer you a way to kind of structure what is oftentimes like a large unstructured problem. And it's going to begin creating your training and validation set. And along the way, you're going to get some value out of it too. Ideally, it's a win-win where both the heuristic is providing some short-term business value and ultimately setting you up for success when AI becomes the ultimate solution for you. One of the biggest values of heuristics is, again, their explainability, but also just how much cheaper they are. You don't need a massive GPU farm in order to power a heuristic. They don't need petabytes of data to be trained on and a constant retraining process that's going to eat up, processing time for your company. They are just implemented much more quickly. They allow you to learn much more quickly. And ultimately, that learning comes at a much lower cost. Financial cost, again, because of the lower processing time, but also cognitive cost. When you're asking people to develop and work on and build heuristics, it is a much lower cognitive load, much lower cognitive threshold for them than working on and iterating on machine learning or AI solutions. And so it's a really valuable way to, again, get more people familiar with the customer outcome you're trying to reach. It's a great way, again, to be building data. It's a cheaper way for your company to learn. And I think everybody has probably heard just how important it is to fail and learn quickly. And a heuristic is a really important way to get that speed of learning that you need. And lastly, heuristics ultimately help you determine both the opportunity size as well as the baseline. What is the baseline for us to beat if we did decide that AI or ML is the right path forward? The heuristic, again, is helping you to validate that there's a customer need. It is able to help you learn quickly and iterate to determine that need and a viable solution can be built by your team. And lastly, we're seeing some value out of it, but we know that there's more. We know that there is a pattern. We know that there is more data we can add to this and that an AI opportunity exists before us. But the heuristic becomes the champion to beat in your champion and challenger situation. So at the end of the day, if the answer is yes, we need AI, then a heuristic is a great place to start. And one of the ways that Etsy is actually, doing this exact thing that I want to talk about today is when we're thinking about signals, listing signals. So you'll see we've got 2 men's wallets. And what we wanted to do was offer buyers, just some nudges on ways that they could compare and contrast these 2 things. So maybe it's a review score that everybody sees and is familiar with. Maybe it's the opportunity for free shipping or whether a seller is considered a star seller. which means they have a higher threshold for the service that they offer. So in this case, we started out with heuristic. We knew there were a number of signals that we wanted to get a read on. Are they actually valuable to our customers? Are they driving conversion rate when a buyer is looking at these two things? And yes, we did see this. But what we started to unlock is how many more features could continue to improve that conversion rate and average order value. And that's where AI became the ultimate solution. But we had a baseline of performance from the heuristic. We were gathering data on those behavioral signals. And once we combine that with what we knew about buyers and their personalization needs, as well as what we knew about the items and the depth of information that sellers gave us, we could use AI to power a really great signaling experience and ultimately help buyers find the right item for them. Again, lots more resources. Please take a look when we send out the PDF. I think you'll really find a lot of value in these, and you'll see a lot of the context that we drew from.
Okay, cool. I want to be mindful of time, so I might skip a couple slides in this next section because we want to leave plenty of time for discussion and Q&A. So this third principle that we want to talk about is designing a human-in-the-loop system to ensure alignment with your intended outcomes. So AI alignment is basically a body of research that aims to steer AI systems towards humans' intended goals. And the idea is that you really want to make sure you're clear on your goal and you're clear on your objective so that when you are building an AI system, you can identify when it's misaligned. So I really want to like propose reframing how we think about AI automation. I think in the media, especially because it's clickbaity and it gets people like, worked up. There's this idea that AI systems are these autonomous processes that solve all these problems, and you just throw AI at a problem and it's magically solved and it's amazing. So I think instead of thinking about it in that way, I think this quote from Go Wang I think he's from the Stanford HCAI, Human-Centered AI Institute. I love this quote from him where he talks about how let's not think about automation as the removal of human involvement. It's actually the selective inclusion of human participation where it matters most. So instead of asking ourselves, how do we take humans out of the equation? We're asking ourselves, how do we incorporate the most useful and meaningful human interaction into the system? Airbnb has some really wonderful articles talking exactly about how they designed these human-in-the-loop systems. You may have seen some of their new categories on their website, where some of them are like OMG or like amazing pools or something like that. There was no way that an AI-driven system was ever going to come up with a product like that on its own. They really designed a human-in-the-loop system where they could make sure that humans were reviewing what was coming through in a systematic way and ensuring that the AI work was happening where it made sense for a machine to do it, and it didn't make sense for a human being to spend time on that. So again, it's really about thoughtfully designing your human-in-the-loop system. I think something else that I sometimes hear from teams in and out of Etsy in terms of ML teams is, there's this idea that, oh, well, annotation, like human annotation should happen outside of our company. Like it should be somewhere else. It should be people from another country that we pay a lot less or something like that. I think there's a huge case to be made for doing in-house annotation. The primary, and this quote is actually from I think Google's human-in-the-loop machine learning, or maybe I can't remember actually where it's from, but it's this human-in-the-loop machine learning guide. Doing in-house annotation helps you build internal empathy, not just for the process itself, but also for the end output that you're trying to achieve, because you are then actually experiencing like versions of the predictions that an end user might experience and annotating them to be like, oh, this one's good, this one's bad. It also helps you identify as a product team edge cases. So this is something that we really recommend for all of our ML product teams to get familiar with the data that they're working with to help them formulate their own opinions about which training data is good versus bad. Are we evaluating our models in the right way? And also to build that empathy for like, what is the end user experience going to be? Like, do we feel proud that this is what our model is outputting? And I think another really great point here is that human intelligence is the basis of artificial intelligence. I truly, and maybe this is my bias as a designer, I just don't think there's any world where human input won't be necessary. Human intelligence is, after all, the basis for quote unquote artificial intelligence. And so I think designing any AI system requires human beings to have an opinion about what do we care about and what are we after, and what do we really want to change in other people's lives. So bunch of resources here, but I'm going to hand it off to Chip for the last section.
Remember to unmute myself. Thanks, Rachel. So this is the last section, but I would actually say maybe one of the most important sections. And so I know we're a little short on time, but I do want to emphasize just how important it is that who evaluates your AI outputs is just important to how you evaluate it. And evaluation means grading it on, the customer outcomes and business outcomes, but recognizing that the value of diversity in particular and who is evaluating the result of your AI is so vitally important. And I'll talk about some of the obvious risks, but maybe some of the ones that you haven't heard of as well.
Hey, Chip, I just want to jump in and say, don't worry about time. The audience is eating it up. And
awesome.
if you declare this topic as important, then they think it's important too. So please take your time. We're enjoying it.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And I'm sure everybody recognizes the value of diversity and review of AI. I know I saw a number of comments as we were talking in the chat about trustworthiness and bias, ensuring, equity and fairness in the way that AI treats people. And so this is a really, really big and important topic. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about evaluating it through different ways and through, in different situations. Etsy has a great relationship with Spotify. And so one of the opportunities we had to interview them, we talked a lot about how they internally will evaluate their AI systems. They call it dog fooding. It's, a term I think that's become pretty popular, but essentially they'll ask internal Spotify users to listen to a new version of the playlist every day for 3 weeks. I'm not exactly sure if that's in the job description. I don't know if people knew what they signed up for, but they have to listen to that podcast for 3 weeks. And at the end of it, they want to know a human evaluation of whether or not the output of that model, in addition to meeting business goals, was actually, consistent to what their expectations were, and whether the experience of it in various settings was able to meet, the needs of what those users were. And assuming that their internal diversity is representative, I think it gives them a lot of really quick captive feedback to determine ultimately, is this a good product? I think Rachel might have snuck in the line, but would you be proud if we ship this? That's a great, simple, but powerful prompt to understand if we're actually shipping something that's going to do good and is able to meet that customer need.
That was actually straight from the Spotify team that we talked to, and then we stole it.
All credit to Spotify. If you're on the call, we love you. I'm a customer. Including diverse perspectives. This goes without saying that it is vital, but I will say it anyway because it is so vital that diversity in regarding gender, race, education, disability status, the way you think, your skill sets, your background is so critical in a lot of product development, but even more so when you take AI, which is largely an amplification of human behavior, and unleash it, into the world. One of the really cool things that we found when looking at this framework for AI machine learning teaming was the idea of curiosity experts. These people are a little bit like, white hat hackers in some ways that are designed to go in, unpack what's happening with this AI application, understand the system and constraints, and figure out where it could go wrong. They come from a broad background. They could be digital anthropologists or cognitive psychologists or machine interaction professionals, but their job is to prevent some of the kind of, AI-backed disasters that we have seen, whether it's, the Microsoft Twitter bot that went like 0 to racist in a day, or it's, the automatic sinks that couldn't detect when somebody with brown or black skin was trying to wash their hands, right? These situations cry for diversity in testing. And we're starting to see a lot more development and maturing around how we get that diverse evaluation and evaluate ultimately whether this is a good product or not.
maybe my little like, again, like as a designer, like I think that designers and UX researchers are really great functions that a lot of product teams already hopefully have access to, that I think, this is an important job for them to be a key part of, because at the end of the day, like they're really optimizing for the end user experience. And so they can really think through like, what are all the best and worst case scenarios?
Yeah, maybe a good moment for me to say one of my favorite things working at Etsy has been the inclusion of Rachel and the design team in this very technical platform and AI space. It is vital to consider the user experience of what you're building, because otherwise you end up with that Alexa skit where it's just old people yelling at a device that they don't even understand. And I think, super valuable. If your company does not have designers in the space, advocate for it, because I think it is a game changer when you consider how to use this technology for good and how to build experiences that are actually going to be really important to your customers. Last big thing, you are not your user. You are too close. It is your baby. You think it is beautiful, and it may not be. And so it is so valuable to get other people's perspectives, internal people, whether it's dog fooding or internal surveying, external customers, whether it's a customer advocacy group or a small set of alpha users. You really need to get outside perspectives, particularly with AI, again, because it's a bias amplifier, to determine whether or not you're building something that's going to solve your customer problems in a healthy, good for the world kind of way. So keep this in mind. Write it on a Post-it note, stick it on your monitor. You can be developing something amazing, but ultimately you are not the user. You are here to build something that's going to be used by many people, and ensuring that you have a diversity of opinions on the success is very, very important. Again, going back to how Etsy is thinking about internal evaluation in particular, we had a product called Complete the Look. Complete the Look is designed to help you kind of finish out a stylistic journey. So if you're, thinking about decorating your living room, how do we tell you throw pillows and table lamps and an accent rug that are all going to help you kind of, figure out what that, full package could be. Same thing for an outfit. Maybe we'll offer accessories or a scarf to help you. And so the goal is to be complementary, but not too similar. And so, less worry about, the bot being racist, but in this case, we're worried a lot about whether or not it's just offering a lot of sameness. Is it just giving me 500 throw pillows? Well, I already got throw pillows. I need something else. And so we just used a really quick survey that allowed us to get a diversity of opinions, that allowed us to internally, again, with that captive audience that we could follow up with, and that had the knowledge and context to make their answers really valuable. Just ask them, is this too similar? Is there a style mismatch? Is it too visually cohesive or not visually cohesive enough? And ultimately, it led to, I think, a really powerful customer experience that's now live on our site. Please go play with it and let us know what you think. Many more resources. Please check them out.
All right, here's our bonus. It's not really a principle, but it is sort of like a point of view that I want to put out there. So I know we've been talking about this as AI throughout this entire presentation. I would love to provoke this idea that there is no AI. This quote from Jaron Lanier, I don't know if you guys know him. He's like famous technologist guy. He like thinks about big things. Whether or not you agree with the rest of what he talks about, I really loved that this particular quote from him. So I completely agree with him that when we say artificial intelligence, we are actually anthropomorphizing a machine. And it causes us as human beings and as product folks to think about it as a creature that with its own sentience and intelligence. It is not. It is still a tool, just like when the camera was invented and people freaked out about how, oh, well, this is going to make artists obsolete because now you can just capture an image with a camera. I think it's the same, fear in the news cycle that we have today. And there's really no reason to anthropomorphize what is actually a very helpful tool that helps us innovate how we collaborate with each other. So I really love that he proposes to think about AI and machine learning as an innovative form of social collaboration. Anything that we're going to use these new tools for is going to still ultimately be guided by what humans think is important, like what we think is valuable to put out into the world. What it can do that, is novel that we haven't had technology to help us do is it gives us kind of like a scarily accurate sometimes mirror of humanity. It is a mirror to what we are. And so by thinking about it more as a mirror and as a tool, I think that really helps us understand, like, here's how we need to evolve so that we can continue to leverage this for hopefully good reasons and for hopefully ways that we can impact end user experiences positively. So that's my, final, like, there is no AI, and let's think about it not as a creature, but as a mirror and a tool.
That is brilliant, Rachel. And you'll notice a comment in the chat there. Everyone is looking up what anthropomorphize means. I'm sure David was just joking, but because it is so relevant to the conversation, talk a little bit more about that act of anthropomorphizing AI and why that might be dangerous.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like, anthropomorphization is the act of assigning sentience to something that doesn't have sentience. And so when we say artificial intelligence, even just by using the term intelligence, people get this feeling and this vibe that this machine has sentience and has a mind of its own. It doesn't. It's just a very sophisticated mirror of human actions and behaviors and language and images. It's just mirroring what we've given it. And so that's why I think there actually is so much fear. I think I blame the news cycle a little bit for the fear mongering, because there's this idea that, oh my God, AI is going to take your job. It's not that the machine doesn't have sentience. The machine is not going to come out and make your job obsolete. But we do have to, as humans in the new 2023 world, have to grapple with, okay, well, what can this tool now do, and how do I want to work with it to make sure that I am influencing how it changes our experience of the world. So it's a tool, not a creature. It does not have sentience. It is not intelligent. It is just mimicking us.
Brilliant. Did I interrupt you there? You got one more quote here. Did you want to talk about that, Rachel? Sorry.
Oh, no. I just wanted to quickly go through the appendix because we drew from a lot of external reading and writing. I mean, we're not the only ones thinking about this. There's a whole community out there of people who care a lot about ethical uses of machine learning. So the People AI Guidebook, Google's had a team focused on this. Whatever you think about Google as a company, they do have a whole dedicated team of UX researchers and anthropologists and engineers and applied scientists thinking about this. And they have a lot of very specific guidance and very tactical guidance for building AI products. There are many different declarations of responsible AI, but I found that the Montreal Declaration of Responsible AI is the most comprehensive and the most referenced in the literature that I see. So this is a list of, I think there's 60 principles in here. So it is a lot, but give it a read. And I think it's helpful, especially as you're familiarizing yourself with how to be more human-centered in building AI ML products. I think it's helpful to get the gears turning and maybe help you be like, okay, we can use this as a checklist. Have we considered this? Have we thought about this? Rules of machine learning. This is a lot more geared towards engineering folks and machine learning applied scientists. But I find it really useful if I want to make sure that I'm communicating with one of my machine learning engineering partners effectively. I can use some of the language that I know that they're using in their engineering world. So this is I think this is good for anybody who wants to make sure that you're aligned with your engineering team and that your engineering team also has a good guidebook for best practices. The AIX design community was started by designers, and they have all these very cool worksheets and guides and templates to help product folks and product teams think through a lot of these questions. So for example, one of these tools is assessing feasibility for idea selection. So could you teach an intern how to do this task? Because if you can't, then you probably can't apply machine learning to it. So going through this toolkit is, I think, also really, really helpful. Very, very practical, tactical, PDFs that you can download and start using on your team right away. This Google talk from 2019 that we already mentioned is linked in here as well. This Duke University Human Factors in AI course on Coursera, this has actually become the standard onboarding procedure for our design team. Every single new designer that is working in ML, when they first start working ML or when they join, we make them take this Coursera course. It is just a great comprehensive course about how to consider human factors in building AI products. There's even like a little like exercise project that they have to do at the end that really forces you to like grapple with some of these questions and think through some of these examples. So love this course. AIX Design also has a Medium site that you can look at, and that's it. Okay, I've wrapped up all of the things in the appendix.
That's it. Oh my goodness, guys, let me tell you something. Chip, did you have a concluding thought before I get on to the praising part?
I just said boom.
Boom. Mic drop. Chip and Rachel, if you are ever having a sad day, let me encourage you to just pull up the chat from this webinar today and your mood will be instantly elevated. You are getting some high praise in there, and you have saved plenty of time for questions. And believe me, there's questions. Folks are legitimately concerned about how this is going to affect their lives, their careers, their loved ones. So let's start off with maybe the most obvious in a business context here. You touched on it briefly, Rachel. Can you talk a little bit more about whether or not my job is going to be taken away by AI? Should I be concerned about it? Should I be doing something now to ensure that that does not happen?
Rachel, I'll take a first stab at it. I don't think nearly all people need to be concerned about their jobs. However, I think they need to be ready to learn quickly because their job is going to evolve very, very quickly. I'll use an example. In my time away from Etsy, I build and design board games. And one of the things that we do a lot is art for board games. And we have artists, freelancers, and folks on staff that we use who are wonderful, and they create character art and environments and graphic design. And with Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, that changes the game a lot. It doesn't replace those artists because you still, and I don't think anytime soon, will be able to do the things that they can do. However, it changes the way that I interact with them in a big way. I'm now able to use Midjourney to like come up with prompts and ideas around the way that I want to design my next board game, and they can take that and run with it. So I think there's going to be a lot of evolution in the way your job is unfolding. I think there's going to be a lot of thought around what does it mean to be superhuman. So rather than just AI versus humanity, but superhumanity, where we're leveraging AI tools to make ourselves better at our jobs. But I am not really concerned about, at least in the technology sector, the risk to jobs today. Now, that said, I don't know that 12 months ago, I would have guessed that ChatGPT was going to evolve the way it had. So, disclaimer that I am not a prophet.
Rachel, anything to add to that?
I think I would say a lot of the same things. I think it's feeling, I think the feeling of fear is always valid. Like anyone's feelings are valid, and it's working through the fear to try to find ways to grow yourself as well, and to find ways to learn and to see what your opinion is on how you might be able to leverage any kind of AI product to make you more efficient at your job or think through more things that you need to think through. So yeah, I agreed with what you said.
We have a great quote in the Pragmatic Institute generative AI workshop that starts this week. As I was working on the development of that course with Nils Jantz, that says, you will not be replaced by AI. You'll be replaced by a person using AI, unless you are that person. So that was a nice mix of realism and optimism for me, really, getting my footing in this new arena. All right, some more questions from the audience. You guys ready? Here's a question from Brian. What are some examples of products or applications you've seen where AI is being used incorrectly or poorly? I don't know if you're willing to commit to brand names here, but maybe you can speak in generalities where you need to. Examples where AI might be used poorly.
I mean, I'll throw a hand grenade in the ring. ChatGPT is being used wrong, being used poorly. It has created hysteria, and I don't think most people recognize what ChatGPT is trained to do. People question its veracity all the time, but what ChatGPT's ultimate function, what ChatGPT was trained to do by its creators, and I've talked to the former head of product at OpenAI about this, is it's designed to give you the answer it thinks you want. It is not designed to tell you what is true. And so people are using it to create lawsuits, and they're using it to write papers for colleges, and they're using it for medical diagnoses. And that is a gross misuse of this technology, largely without guardrails, in a way that is creating a lot of that fear, anxiety around what's possible. And so I think, be careful with the hype. There is a lot of asterisks around what ChatGPT is and other LLMs and these chatbots are capable of. And I just say proceed with caution. Like, be skeptical and remember that these were trained by humans, and their goals may not align with the goals that you have for using it. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest ones and one of the most obvious ones on the scene right now.
Right. So maybe a lot of the fear is coming from these examples of where it goes horrifically wrong, while at the same time realizing how much we're starting to trust it already. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Here's an example, a question from Saba, who says, I tend to see a lot of examples of B2C enhancements using AI or ML, sorry. Do you have any suggestions on resources to use for B2B enhancement ideas?
Oh yeah, the GitHub coding, what's it called? Copilot, I think.
Copilot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like GitHub launched Copilot to help engineers, write code from scratch a little bit faster, which I think is usually the correct application of like a text-based generative AI model, like for example, ChatGPT. The idea is like it should be able to get you from 0 to 1 very quickly with a bunch of text or code or whatever, but you still have to do the work to iterate on it and make it actually functional and work.
Yeah, I think broadly the area of employee productivity is going to be a big B2B category for Gen AI and AI generally. Coding is one of them, but also knowledge management, being able to provide services that, auto respond to emails and are able to complete text and summarize documents and, record a presentation and send out meeting notes afterwards. I think that's the area where I've seen the biggest evolution of B2B. I think you're going to see more B2B though in the field of M&A and due diligence though. I think what Gen AI and AI in general is going to be able to offer is just collecting, analyzing, and spitting out summaries from massive amounts of information. And the months of due diligence it takes for a deal to close, I think is going to be shortened pretty dramatically, assuming you can trust the output by some of these AI advancements. So I think that'll be a really big B2B change, and we'll start to see VC and private equity and M&A change because of the infusion of AI in those spaces.
Yeah, I was going to say a different or a similar thing around analysis, like being able to analyze large amounts of information now will be a lot more feasible and take less time. Again, like with the right mechanisms of control and explainability for users who need analysis done on a large amount of information. But that's kind of where I'm excited in terms of, now maybe it'll be easier for me to analyze, like if I want to understand what buyers on Etsy are searching for, I could potentially apply an LLM to help me understand, like out of all the search queries, what are the things that are most salient over time or something like that.
Speaking of that massive amount of information, a lot of that information, of course, is user data. What steps can we take to address user concerns about security, privacy, and ethical use of user data if we decide to implement it in the products that they use.
Yeah. I hope I'm not being too hyperbolic, but I think there's a data war coming. I think that the data that companies have will become ever more valuable. If anybody listening in this call is a data product manager, your job security just went through the roof, because what you're going to see that differentiates each AI solution from another is data. It is the data that you uniquely possess as either an individual or a company, and it is the ability to leverage that data to provide an ML-backed solution that is going to change whether or not it's successful. As we think about privacy, though, I think that there are a lot of guideposts that the EU is already setting up to help regulate the use of, the protection of, and the consequences of misusing data in ways that I think, or that I hope we start to see kind of adopted around the world. Etsy is a global company. We're abiding by those rules. We're pretty proactive in advocacy around user protections of their data. But I think you're starting to see, particularly in the generative art space, a really interesting fight happening, right? Between like Getty Images and Midjourney, and who owns the rights to that data. So I think there's a lot of litigation to play out. I would say, personally, coming from Etsy, and Rachel, I hope you agree that we try to err on the side of our users over the machines, and we want to make sure that we're protecting our user data. We're definitely respecting rights to be forgotten. We're anonymizing every place we can, and that we are using that data for good. Yeah, my fear with Gen AI and with the advancements of AI overall is there's going to be a lot of bad uses of it too. And so I would just say, kind of as like a personal message, to make sure that you know where your data lives today, and that you're protecting it where you can, and that you're, blocking those cookies, because more and more data in this data war is going to get swept up, is going to get trained into an LLM, and it's going to get used, hopefully for you, potentially against you.
I mean,
wow.
I also think
Rachel.
it's important, as someone who's focused on user experience, like I'm always thinking about like, how much control do we give our users, right? How much transparency do we give our users? Every single time they interact on the site, have they opted in? Have they given us permission to use their data to show them personalized recommendations? Is that something that we can make sure that we've at least communicated the best that we can on what that relationship looks like between us as a business and an experience that they use, and we're trying to meet their needs. We're trying to give them what they need when they're using Etsy, but also we want to make sure that they understand what that means, that in terms of what we take from them, when they're browsing the site, do they understand? We know what you clicked on, and what knowing what you clicked on is necessary in order for us to say, hey, we actually think you might like this other item.
Some big decisions to be made on the part of both the product managers and the users in that regard, of course. Wow. Here is a great question from Mike. Mike says, many of the current AI tools are geared towards natural language models or image processing. Can you recommend any AI tools for time series data analysis? And for those less technically minded out there, if you could give it short description of what time series data analysis is, that would sure be helpful. Chip or Rachel.
Yeah, I will admit this will be me out over my skis, and I don't have any like recommendations off the top of my head, but I can certainly drum some up, and maybe we can include that before the PDF goes out. So time series analysis, time series is a type of database where it's looking at events over a period of time rather than just snapshots, moments in time as a single database. So I think data analysis in general is going to be a really powerful tool for AI, and I think we talked a little bit about it. It is an area that there's going to need to be some trust gaining, but the power of massive compute being put towards these problems that normally could have taken hundreds of analysts, I think is going to be pretty game changing. So I can get back to you. I can add a couple in the appendix. I can definitely check around to see what we've been doing with it, but nothing I have off the top of my head. Sorry.
Brilliant. And then looks like we've got some comments coming up in the chat of folks that have tried that very same thing as well. So as usual, the value is in the community. Thanks, guys. That's why we love you. Let's see. Do we have? Oh my goodness! Look at the time, guys. We're having too much fun. You know what happens when you have fun, right? This has been simply amazing. as is evidenced by the chat, by the questions. Folks, I apologize if we didn't have time to get to all of your questions. Chip and Rachel, because we didn't, where can folks reach out to you if they would like to engage or have further questions that we just weren't able to get to today?
Yeah, I think feel free to reach out to me by email. It's just chip@etsy.com. Always love engaging with PMs and helping to answer anything about the presentation today or about the way that Etsy is using ML. The other thing is I am a pragmatic alumni, so I think I need to get into the community. So Eddie,
Chip,
I'll
what are you doing?
I didn't know. It was a long time ago. I'll 15, 16 years at this point. So I will reach out and maybe I can, join the community and share a little bit more there.
We would love having you there, and you would only elevate the conversation, particularly on this topic. So I think folks are excited just to hear that you're going to come play. We will love to have you there. And I know because everybody always has the question, Chip and Rachel have both been gracious enough to share the presentation today. So anybody that's registered for the call today, shortly, you will all get an email with a link to the presentation as well. Chip and Rachel, it has been simply amazing having you here discussing this most timely of topics. I know the crowd loved it. I loved it too. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just quickly promote the next in our product chat series. That one's going to happen September 28th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We will welcome Senior Product Marketing Manager at HubSpot, Alex Rainford, for a conversation on how to employ strategic marketing plans and tactics to fuel your product growth. And in the meantime, Chip and Rachel have given you enough resources that you all have homework to do, folks. You got things to watch and things to read and things to learn and questions to come up with answers for. Rich content that will surely better all of our lives and our careers. Chip and Rachel, thank you so much for being here with us today and making us smart.
Eddie, just quick note, before you guys send out the PDF, I realized that I made one error on one of the slides as I was going through the presentation. So I'm gonna
forget it. I take back everything I said.
I'm gonna give me let me send you an edited version with the correct link, and then I'll
no problem. No problem. It will go out correct and wonderful. And we're so appreciative that you were here with us today. Gang, join us again next time. This has been wonderful. We'll see you again at Pragmatic Institute Product